Jill, happy Friday. Welcome to the Story of Us.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Happy Friday.
Oh, I'm looking so forward to getting to know you better on this show. Thank you for saying yes when I reached out. I'm a big fan of Packets of Hope and your organization, and I was just so grateful that you said yes to joining me on a really in Kentucky here pretty Friday afternoon in March. So thanks.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm a fan of what you're doing, so thank you.
Ah, great. Great. Well, like we spoke about earlier, at the foundation or the core of the Story of Us project, it's about humans connecting and the interconnectedness of all humans. And I believe that that happens best through storytelling. It's an art that we've forgotten about in today's digital media world where we're constantly looking at the screens. So part of this is putting the phone down and connecting with some remarkable humans around the earth like you, and so, would you mind if we kicked it off and you started from the beginning? Jill, would you start diving in, tell us your story?
Tell you my story. Uh,
So, Jill, where'd you grow up?
yeah, I'm just gonna say that my story is, I'm sure, like so many people's stories. It's a story of somebody who was bullied as a child and has spent the rest of her life dealing with that. And Jeff, I don't know about your particular childhood and growing up years and your experiences, but what I have found is that people are either bullied, they're bullies, or they're both. So nobody
Mm,
escapes the ugliness of bullying. So if you're to say, what's your story? It's about being bullied in middle school and having that bully apologize to me at our 10-year high school reunion. Most people don't have that happen to them. I almost didn't go to that reunion, but she came up to explain, to apologize and explain her life, and it blew my mind. And then so I'm at that point 28. I'm now going to be 65. I've spent all of these decades trying to make sure that the things that happen to me and to her, nobody chooses to become a bully. Things happen to them in their life that makes them that way. So she had gone through a lot of pain herself. And I just have devoted my life to making sure, to the best of my ability, that doesn't happen to other people. And as a result of that, I founded a nonprofit organization back in 1992. And we publish free curriculum materials that help young people become good decision makers. They learn how to respect themselves, respect others, communicate hopes and fears. They learn to ask for help, and they learn good study skills. They learn how to make it through high school, into college. So beginning in kindergarten, fairness, kindness, you name the important life skill that you want every child on the planet to learn, it's in our Overcoming Obstacles curriculum. And 180 million children in close to 200 countries have been taught this curriculum, this life skills curriculum, through their teachers. And that was because, little Jill Siegel was bullied in middle school.
I love how you phrase that, that you're either a bully, you're the victim of a bully, or both, but no one escapes it.
No.
And I think that's a universal truth about all humans, whether they grew up in Pacific Palisades or in Tonga. I'm guessing that that's part of the human story. And so I'm fascinated. What was your background? How did you start the organization that you have, Overcoming Obstacles? All right, you said you have a philosophy background. Is that right?
Yes. So I was always interested in teaching and education, and I was a teaching assistant when I was in elementary school. I was a tutor in middle school and high school, and then at UCLA studying philosophy with the emphasis on ethics. I was a teaching assistant in the engineering department, where Gary Gasca was teaching Dr. Moisha Rubinstein's problem solving and decision making book. And I learned about decision making trees and how this is a formal process. It's not just like, hey, make a good decision, or what did you decide to do today? There's an actual formal process to good decision making. And that was something that resonated with me and stayed with me, and then my thread through my 20s was, uh, educational film production, uh, that culminating moment of having this young woman apologize to me, the girl that had bullied me. I found out her story. She was to make amends, teaching these things that she said were life skills to children that were adjudicated. They were in juvenile, they were in prison. And that was just one more example of like what life skills. And she explained to me that there is this formal process that anyone can go through to learn these important skills. And came to understand that really this is the base of the learning pyramid. If we acknowledge or believe that reading, writing, and arithmetic are a learning pyramid, when you teach children how to communicate, make good decisions, and set meaningful goals, and you teach them study skills and problem solving and empathy and kindness and fairness and respect, the classroom culture changes, their life trajectory changes. The ripple effect means people in their family become uh, really more engaged and better people. I've seen this time and time again over the years. Better people meaning more focused on goals, more direction oriented, more successful in their careers and their career choices. And at the time, I wanted to see this curriculum more than just with adjudicated youth. To me, it should have been something she and I learned when we were in school. But when I dug deeper, I found a curriculum publisher, of course, can't publish something that doesn't exist in a classroom. And a teacher can't teach something that there's no curriculum that's published. So I had already had experience with a not for profit, and I knew how to start a business, and that just became my mission. In 1992, we incorporated as a not for profit organization. We had a team of wonderful educators work together to create a curriculum, and it became the Overcoming Obstacles kindergarten through 12th grade life skills curriculum. And now every child has the opportunity to learn these skills to help them not only become better students, but better community members, better family members. And I'm friends, and some of our board members now at Overcoming Obstacles were they were students, and now they're teachers of life skills. They are parents teaching life skills to their children. It's just a beautiful full circle for me.
Oh, you've got to be so proud of the accomplishments that you've made. You said over 108 million children have been
180,
80 million.
180.
Okay, well, that's a
Yeah, my
lot
husband was
more.
big on numbers, so, he's whispering in my ear from heaven, 180, 180 million, and that's hundreds of thousands of educators who just they get it. A teacher gets the importance of the children having a reason to come to school in the morning. That it, this curriculum shows them it's about me. It's about me. This is how I'm going to get what I want in life. It's not reading somebody else's play or learning how to conjugate verbs or what's the isosceles triangle? Yes, those are important things, but what's in it for me? How will this benefit me when I'm going through all of these difficult things? A lot of kids, it's tough for them just to get to school in the morning. Kids in some tough neighborhoods, you know, they're they're facing a lot just to make it through the door. Kids that don't have moms or dads that are home to wake them up or give them a breakfast. Kids who have two parents that are engaged still. Come middle school, you're a dad, you know. Kids aren't usually listening to their parents, but they're in school, and this is an opportunity to formally learn these concepts, which some folks say, oh, why aren't you teaching life skills at home? Well, we wouldn't expect our parents to teach kids algebra, geometry, English lit. We should not expect them to teach life skills.
Are those, is that curriculum available to parents that they can use around the house?
So ideally, this is taught by the teachers as part of the regular school day, and that's what we see in most of the schools now in the United States. I mean, you don't get to 180 million kids without having a lot of engaged educators teaching your curriculum. So, yes, the majority, meaning more than half of the educators in the country now, are either using our life skills curriculum or somebody else's. And with that, I'll say that parents being able to use life skills to supplement the learning in the classroom is a huge, wonderful thing. And we do on our overcomingobstacles.org website. Everything's free, and parents can download materials and teach life skills to their younger child and older child. And I'd love for them to do that.
You've got to be so proud. And I think the last part to unpack about this chapter of your life that we're talking about is that this was all seeded through this apology from your bully. But what you also found out, I think I learned in the book, was that this bully had coincidentally or not coincidentally shared that they had been abused at home. They had turned to drugs, had kind of hit rock bottom. And it's remarkable how you were able to take a difficult time in your life, a difficult time in her life, and create something else out of the apology, really a mission that has driven you since 1992 and is still going strong. It's really
Well,
remarkable.
I if I had just been a dilettante, if it didn't matter to me personally, the organization wouldn't be around. The statistics were packed against us. The number of companies, let alone not-for-profit corporations that fail. I mean, you're a business person in addition to a podcaster, the numbers are staggering. And at many times along the way, things happened where I just wanted to quit. I wanted to stop. It was too difficult. But I couldn't have lived with myself because I knew what I was doing made a difference. I had to keep going.
So tell us a little bit. There's part of your story that's really fascinating to me that is right before you started overcoming obstacles. Before you founded that, you taught life skills to gang members and
Yeah.
former inmates, and you did that alongside somebody that a lot of people are really familiar with, the NFL Hall of Famer Jim Brown. What a remarkable guy. Can you tell us a little bit about that chapter of your life? Because I find it really fascinating.
So I know I'm not interviewing you. People say remarkable guy. Clearly, you don't. Remarkable is typically a word that's associated with something positive.
Okay.
So his athletic prowess was phenomenal. Jim was probably the greatest, if not one of the greatest running backs in the history of the National Football League. That being said, the man had an incredible temper. He went to prison for throwing his girlfriend over a balcony. I experienced some things with Jim. One could call it harassment. I was bullied by Jim, threatened when I wanted to leave his organization. So, just, crazy experience for me, but eye opening for the power of life skills education. So, this bully, let's call her Sarah, um, she apologized to me. And I didn't just say, oh, I'm starting a not for profit. I spent a couple of years, actually 4 years, researching is there curricula already in existence? I did massive research with classmates, educators, people in the Los Angeles and California education system. What do you consider the missing link to education being? California and the state Senate had already done their study, and they had already come up with the conclusion, which we all know, workforce readiness. Our children, it was the Department of Labor and the Health Department came out and said, children need to learn, they called it something else, but for simplicity, we'll call it life skills in order to thrive, to be gainfully employed. So all of this evidence is there. I needed to do it myself. And the day I decided I had to find an organization, something, the Sarah was working in Baltimore with adjudicated youth. I wasn't going to move from Los Angeles, where I was living at the time, but literally, and you're a big believer. I know you're a Joseph Campbell fan, and you know synchronicity. Synchronicity. Joseph Jaworski, living that moment before I had read his book. I said I needed to find an organization. Jim Brown, there was a front page LA Times article that day about Jim and his work with gang members and ex gang members and teaching life skills to them. And I was working in the broadcast industry at the time. And one of my friends, I was speaking with her, and I said, wow, I need to find a way to get a hold of Jim Brown. I want to volunteer, teach life skills there. And she said, oh, my station manager was just married at Jim's house. Let me ask him for Jim's number. Put me on hold, went in to the station manager's office. He had been talking to Jim on the phone at the time. My friend told the station manager the story. The station manager tells Jim. Jim challenged me. He said, I can't believe that bougie woman would come up to a home in the Hollywood Hills filled with 100 Black gang members. And she's repeated this to me. I'm like, of course I will. Why wouldn't I?
Have you
And
met
I went,
Jill?
hello, of course. I'm going to go up there. So I drove up, and then I spent several months, almost every single day, working with truly amazing young people who wanted to make a difference in their lives. Some had given up gang membership, some were, on the fence with it. And that was how I found out, yeah, this is real. This is real. And I, I taught life skills, I watched them change. And then I said to Jim, I've got to move on. It's not for me, a, a, a certain group. It's all children, all young people. And yeah,
Yeah, well, it was a test by fire education and purpose and sounds like boundaries. And also the moment you finally walked away and did that something on your own. So it served its purpose in your life.
it did. And Jeff, you've referred to the book. So the book is Packets of Hope, A Journey of Healing and Rediscovery, which I wrote just recently. It was published in October of 2025. And this was after my husband's battle with dementia. And I lost him in December of 2023. I had battled breast cancer, had a double mastectomy while he was failing from his illness, and then he passes, leaves me, and within months I was diagnosed with not one but two primary lung cancers and had half of my left lung removed and had a series of chemo infusions and just wanted to stop living. All of the life skills that I had been wanting educators to teach, and I had been sharing with educators predominantly here in the US, I wasn't using, and I literally just wanted to give up. So my doctors had said, you need to get away from home. You need to take a trip and get away. And that became a journey around the world, something John and I wanted to do, but I wasn't going to just go and, do a booze cruise or, lollygag. I seemed so self-indulgent, but I certainly would go. And in every one of the ports that I could, so this is dozens of ports, I would deliver information about overcoming obstacles to ministers of education. So that journey was truly life-saving, not just life-changing, but life-saving for me. And that's the book. I just want your listeners to know that's the book.
Yeah, it's a remarkable book, just published. I think you said in October, correct? And it's a memoir that you tell in real time. It started off as a 107-day journal aboard the maiden voyage of the Queen Anne, right?
Yeah,
So you boarded that in January of 2025 with cracked lungs, a bit of a broken heart, and this envelope full of purpose,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that journey? Because I think it's important for the listeners to understand what again led you to want to hop on that boat. I know that you had a friend that said, Jill, it's time to take some baby steps. And you had a doctor that said you need to get out and travel. And I think part of that is because you had been a caregiver for John for several years.
It's almost a
Also,
decade of bad health for both of us, yeah,
a decade of bad health for both you and John,
being
also
shut in.
combined with the COVID pandemic, and I believe you were in New York City at the time. So
Yeah.
really homebound for a extended period of time. It's amazing the courage that it took to step on board a boat, and this is not this is not take a vacation. Like you said, this wasn't a booze cruise. This is travel with purpose. I mean, 26 ports, 17 countries,
Yeah.
6 different continents. Uh, yeah, that's quite an undertaking. Do you mind if we, step back and would can we dig in and talk a little bit about John? I'd love to get to know him
Absolutely.
as a person.
He's
How did
he's my favorite person in the world.
how did you meet him?
We met through work. We met more synchronicity. His company, Donaldson, Lufkin and Jenrette. I was in LA, and his LA office was trying to recruit new clients, and my dad had an invitation. My dad said, I'm staying where I am. I think he was with Merrill Lynch. He said, but you go. I just started overcoming obstacles. He goes, you go. This might be an opportunity to raise money. Raise money. We were a not for profit at the time raising money. We now have an endowment. And so the rest is history. They wanted a client. I went there at my dad's behest, and people that I met with uh, certainly loved what we were doing in Los Angeles. And they said, hey, when you're in New York, meet with our New York people. And Mayor at the time, I hate to say the words, but Mayor Giuliani and his school's chancellor, they were looking all around the country for best practices. They saw what we were doing for Mayor Reardon in Los Angeles and in other cities. And a group of people said, move to New York and start overcoming obstacles here. Our city needs you, and you can make this your national headquarters. And that was 1995. So we did that. And in that meeting at Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette in New York, I met someone who would become a best friend. And years later, he'd asked me to marry him.
It's wonderful. You write in the book that after John passed away, that you didn't wanna live.
Nope.
That's an extraordinary thing to say out loud in a book. What made you decide to be that honest? And was there a moment during the journey where you genuinely felt that shift from surviving to wanting to be alive again?
So the book was a journal first. I've got 5 precious nieces and nephews, and uh, the oldest child from my brother George. Thank you, George. His name is Jeremy Siegel. All the kids knew how I had been suffering from the loss of their uncle, and then from my battles with cancer. And Jeremy said, "Look, Aunt Jill, here's a gift." It was this beautiful journal with a map of the world. He and I are both into pens, and this is the kind of pen. It's like this gel tip.
Ooh, I like those too.
They're so
Those are my
cool. It's so
favorite.
nice. Thank you. It's so nice to write with. So Jeremy said, "This I want to give you a gift as you head off on your journey." And uh, some people are into journaling. I'd never been into journaling. I wasn't really sure what it was, but I got on that ship. I was so depressed, so sad, so lonely. I started out on my own. It was by myself, trying to channel John's energy, trying to find him spiritually in my heart. And just in desperation, just thinking, I can jump over here. There's a nice, you know, there's the sea, or I'm just going to get all this pain and all these thoughts because, you're out at sea and it's quiet and there's all this space. And I couldn't do public things. My doctor said, don't shake hands. Purell, wash your hands, don't do anything public, don't go to the lectures. So it was a lot of time on my own. And these thoughts and feelings just started to come out onto the paper. And they came out too quickly. So I went from this beautiful journal that stayed next to me the whole journey onto the laptop. And just
Mhm.
every day was writing 10 hours a day, writing, writing, writing. And, I'm journaling, so it should be honest. These are my real thoughts and feelings. And when it came time to look at it and say, what do I want to publish? Like, why wouldn't I share that feeling of not wanting to keep going? It's a real feeling. And when I've engaged with other people, grieving widows and widowers, it's a common thing. If you were connected in a deep way to your spouse or your partner and you miss them, and especially if you've been a caregiver, I mean, that was my reason to get up every morning, was to make sure that he was safe and okay, and I lived for any smile. So yeah, and he was the strongest. Anyone who knew him knew how strong and lovely a human being he was, and gorgeous inside and out. So who wouldn't miss that? If you've
That's
got a
beautiful.
pulse, you're gonna miss that.
You described John as your oxygen, and I know we all have somebody that feels like that. You mentioned often you were a full-time caregiver to him, not just, the love of his life. You were inseparable for decades, and then came his death, and then just after that, your lung cancer, almost as if your body was responding physically to losing air. Did that parallel feel significant to you?
Not until this moment. I read something, I think in one of the people that you cite on your website, there's some visual, or is it on your website? Like liver, lungs. Do you know what I'm referring to? There's something, and I didn't
Hmm.
stay with it long. But now that you said that, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't think of that earlier, but I try not to dwell on things too much. And yeah, wow,
I
ouch.
I think it's also remarkable that a doctor told you to travel. Not many people hear something like that from a physician that's able to say, what you need is to get out of the everyday and spend some time with yourself in reflection. And very similar to how you started overcoming obstacles, where you had to turn this into a mission. You turned this travel trip into something else, into a mission. That's not exactly a form of a grief roadmap, if you ask me. My question is, where do you think you would have ended up if that physician hadn't suggested that you go on the travel, or your friend hadn't said, Jill, I think it's time to take some baby steps in the positive direction? If you hadn't taken this journey across the globe and spent that time on yourself, where do you think you would have ended up?
So before I answer that, just so it wasn't as if John passes, so, the diagnosis, and then I leave on the trip. I had my lung surgery on my birthday of 2024. So John passes in 2023. My surgery is March of 2024. Chemo followed, and then I finished chemo, I wanna say it was August. So that's some months before, the beginning of the next year. And he absolutely, my doctor had said, he had encouraged me to do grief groups, and, it's for a lot of people, it wasn't for me. So I didn't go into a grief workshop or um, cancer recovery group. I chose not to do that. But every single day from when John passed to when I got on that ship, I sent emails to every superintendent of schools in the country, and literally have just finished those emails. So thousands and thousands of superintendents have received personal emails from me telling them why I founded Overcoming Obstacles, and the website address overcomingobstacles.org, where they and the teachers in their schools could get free, life-changing resources. And that was my therapy. That was my reason to get up every day. I knew that I had the ability to help educators who are our heroes. So to help educators and kids around our country. So having purpose outside myself was the life changer for me. And my friend Sandy, who's also an Overcoming Obstacles board member, had said, when it came time when my doctor said travel, he didn't say take a world journey. He thought, go to Maine. He was like, just get
Right.
outside of your house because I had been shut in for years. So his thing was just travel. It became this world journey because when you are so sick and when you lose the love of your life, you realize that this grains of sand in that sand dial are running out. You realize time is finite. And I didn't know how much time. I still have cancer in the lower left lung. They couldn't operate on it. If you remove your whole left lung, had it been my right, they could have taken it all out. But you can't take out somebody's whole left lung because that's where your heart is and it shifts and you die. So the cancer in my lower left lung is near my pulmonary artery, very difficult to reach by radiation. They wanted to do a chemo pill, which would have, definitely made me unable to move. It would have immobilized me. It's a very strong drug. So I just said, no drugs, no more. I'm done. My kidneys were giving out because of the chemo. It's like I knew that if it was one day left or 10 years or 20, whatever it was, I was going to spend it the best way I could to do the work that I was meant to do on this planet. And the trip became something to honor John and me. And it's, the world trip we never got to take. And he was a huge fan of overcoming obstacles. He was right there with me saying, let's do this, let's do that, let's get the word out. So to go on this ship with these packets, which I call packets of hope, because who knows? I mean, it was so difficult to get in to see a minister of education. I was totally naive to think I could just walk in. Ignorance was bliss because I never would have tried it. But I made my way in, or the packet made its way in everywhere I set out. And ironically, the most difficult one was the superintendent of Hawaii. So it was a state superintendent in our own country before I headed off. And then it was Samoa and Tonga. Incredible journey. So these packets, and Jeff, it's worked. So now the Samoan Minister of Education, the Tongan Minister of Education, we've been working with New Zealand, we've been working with Australia, with the Philippines. This crazy, desperate strategy to reach people outside of the United States was effective. And when I came back, they did a scan of my lungs. The condition right now is stable. I'm living life in chunks of months. So every 4 months,
Awesome.
it's either game over or keep going. And the doctor said, hey, I didn't think I was going to see this. I thought I'd say, you have to do the radiation. The cancer's grown. That was the deal we made. If the cancer grew, I'd have to do the radiation. But he said, hey, whatever you've been doing, keep doing it. So then I went out again. And two couples I met on that journey on Queen Anne traveled with me over summer. So that was January through May. And then in July, August, September, that area, end of July, August, September, I traveled with these two these two couples through Northern Ireland, England, Wales, and Germany, and Scotland, then Germany.
Well, you've seen a lot, but there's so much more. You have so much more to do. In the book, these packets became almost sacred objects to you. You guarded them, you worried over them, you grieved when they might not reach the right hands. You fulfilled your mission, but what did they represent to you beyond just the curriculum inside them?
It was my reason to keep going. It was my
Yeah.
life. It was my life. So what did that trip mean to me? It meant it was the difference between living and dying. It was that important to me.
Take us a little bit on that trip. This is a huge boat. You have 26 ports
They'd say
that you're
ship,
visiting. Ship,
huge ship.
sorry, ship. Yes, of course, ship.
I got corrected a lot,
Oh,
a
I
lot of
would have.
ways.
They would have corrected me way more than you. But 26 ports. The ship pulls into port, and you immediately are off the ship, searching for these ministers of education, the heads of state that are in charge of education in these 26 different areas, and hand delivering them these packets. Is that how it worked?
That's it. And always the first off. Always the first off, because if you're not the anybody who's, listening and is into cruising, if you don't wanna be in a line, be the first off the ship. So if they'd say, "We're pulling into port at 8," I was in line at 7:30.
Okay, but there was a part of the book that I thought was very humorous. I think it was in Sydney, Australia. Is that right? Tell us a little bit. You have a story there.
I'm not a line cutter inner, so these, people think, I don't know, everybody's got their own impression of cultures, and I don't wanna seem like I've pigeonholed people, but the British, for us from the US, seem to be like, just a well-mannered or they're the hooligans. Hooliganism in sports was they liked to tell me there in Great Britain that it was something that started in England. Uh, but, organized, they love a line. You have to respect a cue, they'd say. And maybe that was World War II when there was rations and the way to survive was staying calm and in a line to get your rations. In the US, it's just that's not the way we operate here. I don't think there's that respect for a line. But I had sheared off my crown. I was in agony. Cruise ships have doctors and surgeries, and if you have a heart issue or a broken bone, you're set. If you have a cavity or an abscess, anything that's wrong with your mouth, you're in trouble because there's no dentist on that ship. And the way the timing worked, I had a window in Sydney to get off that ship and get to a dentist to fix this crown. And if I missed that window, I was going to have to miss the ship, try to figure out how to get on it in some other port. And at this stage, I mean, right now, I'm not coughing. I couldn't walk a flight of stairs without having to stop. I mean, I was still very sick. My platelets were bad. Like my blood count was not good. I was way underweight. So this was a bit like I could not be the person who had to then navigate her way through Australia's it was hot and it's a massive country. Uh, so I had been waiting way before everybody else, but in a separate space. And when the Cunard people brought me out, there was this long line of passengers, mostly British, and they all started yelling out, "She's a line cutter in her. Get her out." And folks that looked so sweet to me, over the weeks before had like lasers coming. There was fire coming out of their eyes. They were so angry. I really thought I was going to get stoned. And then uh, example of not using good life skills, shouted back like a child, shouted back, "I'm not a line cutter inner. I'm not. I'm a good person." And ultimately, the Cunard person had to squeeze my shoulder, threatened to kick me off the ship because I was engaged with these people. And incredibly, just as we were pulling into port, the Cunard officer said to the woman behind, "Can this passenger with a medical emergency get in front of you?" And the woman said, as people are shouting, "Yes." And then everybody quieted down, let me in. I made it to the dentist literally with 1 minute to spare.
Ah, but you did it.
I made it.
You did it every time. You delivered on all 26. Which one of those deliveries of the packets felt the most impossible to you?
The most impossible was the port that mattered the most to me. So my husband was from South Africa. and he had left right after college. He was a scholarship kid. He had won a scholarship to study in the United States for his graduate degree. And ultimately, decades later, Nelson Mandela chose 18 people when he was first going back to Robben Island, having become president. This prisoner turned president invited 18 people, and my husband, John, was one of those people. So John and I made many trips back to South Africa, and he loved his country. He did a lot philanthropically, as did I. Overcoming Obstacles had a presence there before this trip. But to go to Cape Town, which we had spent a lot of time in, the two of us, where you can look out and there's Robben Island, to have the ship pull up into that port and know that I had this packet of information to give to Minister Meunier, and if he said yes to life skills for his schools, how life-changing that would be. The pressure was almost unbearable for me, and getting that packet to his office was the most difficult. It was an incredibly huge building. I had roadblocks, literally and figuratively, at every turn. It was hours, but the driver guide that I had would not let me quit. I told him about my husband, and I told him about my mission and what overcoming obstacles was about. He wouldn't let me quit. So ultimately, the packet was delivered.
Not only maybe the hardest, but the most important to you. Well, it seems like Cape Town was pretty pivotal on this trip. How important it was to you and your story, how difficult that journey was to get that packet delivered, but also you write about finding your voice while you're in Cape Town. Maybe
Yeah.
finally speaking up to people you love about why they never shared your work, or why was that harder than that journey walking to the Ministry of Education in a foreign country alone? It seemed like that component was harder for you than delivering the packet.
So had it been my blood family, I would have been a little bit more bold, but this was my husband's family. So in essence, my extended family. And so I have precious step grandchildren and precious step great grandkids. Well, I also had a niece and nephews that are almost my age, and I respect them so much and I love them, but they weren't my blood family. And I can come on pretty strong with life skills education. My blood family knows how much I care, but this South Africa family cares a lot about animals. They're really big. So my octopus teacher was something that gained a lot of traction in conversations. I saw them. It was a port visit with an overnight. So I had 2 days with my husband's family, my family there. And I just, because I'd been immersed in life skills education on this trip, and just thought with the sand seemingly coming faster through that little funnel and it was running out. I was like, I cannot, with these highly intelligent, caring, lovely people who care a lot about animals, I cannot advocate for overcoming obstacles. So at our lunch, I said, you know what? I've heard a lot today about my octopus teacher, but what about my school teacher? What about my child's teacher? And they're like, what? What? It's kind of like some cold water on their faces. They're like, what? What are you talking about, Jill? And so then I said, look, this is, what I'm doing, what I care about. Can you help me? And not knowing what they would say at the end, niece Amanda's husband, John, said, I'll do it. And he's been a great advocate and done some outreach for us, circling back to Minister Meunier, actually, himself, helping me do that. So, yeah, I found my voice. And clearly, based on this interview, I haven't lost it.
Yeah, no, you haven't lost it. And I appreciate you sharing so much. It is very difficult to turn a personal journal, a diary, into a published book that you give away for free. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
To others, you have to put yourself in a vulnerable situation. So, another question about these 26 different deliveries. Which one surprised you most about how it unfolded?
After Hawaii, where the minister, head of education for Hawaii, at first wouldn't even accept the packet. So it took a lot of effort on on my behalf to even convince them to take the packet into his office, which clearly it couldn't have been an explosive device. It's a few pieces of paper in a, they call it an A4 envelope, thinner. It was like not even as thick as a finger. Um, the next stop was Samoa, and it couldn't have been more different. I didn't know what to expect. I was really nervous because of what happened in Hawaii as the first packet delivery. But in Samoa, the minister of education wasn't there. His assistant invited me in, and I sat in her office, and we spent a half hour talking about the issues of her country, what overcoming obstacles, life skills were, what the curriculum looked like, how it could help them. I made the offer, we'll translate the curriculum, the activity sheets into Samoan. It was a really deep, wonderful, engaging conversation, I thought. And clearly she did too, because then she was asking the personal questions. What is this? Why are you on this trip? I told her about my health. I told her about losing John. And as I was heading out the door, I was about to get out of my seat. She said, "Look, Jill, do you still have cancer?" And I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "Do you mind? Could, could we pray over you?" And Jeff, for a split second, I'm Jewish. I believe she's Catholic. And I just thought, and nobody had touched me since my husband's passing. I hadn't been hugged. And I thought, I can't say yes. What is this? I don't even know what this is. But a second later, I said yes. And this wonderful woman and her assistant hugged me, got behind me, held my hands, hugged me. And they prayed to God that my cancer go away, that my heart heal, that John be with me on my journey, that my journey be a success. And I had cried before, but the tears that came down, it was just such a cleansing cry because I could feel their genuine love, these strangers. So what I try to share in the book are that, yes, small steps that we take, just the step to get on the ship, but these gestures, the kindness of strangers to hug and say a prayer for me, it was so beautiful. That was the most precious moment of this journey. And if I had to pick my favorite moment, that's absolutely it.
It was my favorite moment of the book too. I'm so glad you mentioned it because if you didn't, I was going to ask you about it. But my absolute favorite part about this book is, like all good books, a perfect ending. You say at the end, I thought I was there to help these people or to help them, but in truth, they were helping me. Was that the lesson of the whole journey at the end?
Wow. And it was like it was two priests. As I'm getting off the ship, who gets two young priests behind them. It was amazing. They were just these lovely men, and we were waiting in line to get off the ship, and we just engaged in this conversation. And they said, "How was the journey?" And yeah, so it was just another very special, precious moment. And yeah, realizing that I set out to help others, and it was life-saving for me.
You set out to help others, but it feels like one thing that I took away from the book was the power of connection and the power of other people to help people heal. It is hard for humans to heal in isolation. We forget, and I have a friend who just recently shared with me that their coping mechanism is when they're struggling, they hide in a hole and they just need to be left alone until it gets out. And I told them the same thing. I said, being encircled, holding hands, having other human beings feel for you and share their empathy with you is ancient. It's part of the human experience, and it's something that in today's world, in fragmented lives and connection that is immaterial at best, I think that's one of the reasons so many people suffer is they don't have these other people in their lives to help them build that human connection. It's so healing. And to
And
me, that was one of the overarching themes of the book.
well, that's the core. That's really the message I want people to recognize is you have to have something outside yourself. You have to. You have to have other than, "Oh, I need to take care of myself," or "I need to have fun today." The meaning and significance and the true happiness, if we're all honest with ourselves, is when we take care of others or somebody's taking care of us. And that was the port right before Cape Town, KwaZulu-Natal, so Durban area. We are because of others. It's just a concept that I always thought about, but then when I learned about Lobolo and the bride price that the Zulu men pay for their women, and how then many of them think that woman is chattel, that woman is a possession. And really, the trip that I took over the summer through Europe, and we look at women in our own country, the headlines, women as objects, women as possessions. We are because of others. Others can beat us, imprison us, or lift us up. So that concept of we are because of others, I learned in Durban, and then I really internalized it through the rest of the journey. Um, yeah, we need people to lift us up. I now say it's the wind beneath my wings, right? My husband was that. Well, surrounding yourself with positive people and positive things is part of that overcoming obstacles curriculum that teachers are teaching kids starting in kindergarten. You don't want those people that will imprison you or knock you down. Enough bullying. We want the people that are going to lift us up, and we need them to heal and to thrive.
You mentioned in the book the Maori phrase "ake ake ake," and
Yeah,
did I say that right? It's
yeah,
set okay, and this is something you learned, and I believe it means forever and ever and ever. It's
yeah.
beautiful, but what does that battle cry mean to you? Because you took that up as your mantra or your battle cry during your journey.
Yeah, I write about my father, the king of sayings. So I'm someone who grew up really appreciating the value of a saying, like, you know, he was right, dead right as he sped along, and now he's as dead as if he were wrong, which was, drive safely, be a defensive driver. So there's like lessons in everything my father taught us, power of persistence. So when I got to New Zealand, to the Bay of Islands, and that Maori culture, it just really resonated with me, and I heard the phrase "Aki, Aki, Aki" and what it means, and my husband was a rugby player, and he really respected the All Blacks, the New Zealand team,
Yeah.
and, uh, I loved watching the haka. So, to finally be there and to hear "Aki, Aki, Aki," that warrior spirit, I was challenged so much on this journey, and that stayed with me, and when I was challenged, I didn't have one of my dad's favorite sayings, but when I went "Aki, Aki, Aki" over in my head, I just channeled this beautiful energy. We spent, I'm gonna say, a week traveling in New Zealand, and everywhere I went, I was just really, moved by the resilience of these people, and not only, the European New Zealanders and the indigenous, the Maori people. And that resilient spirit, I mean, that's exactly what I needed. I needed to be resilient. We all need to be resilient. And Aki, Aki, Aki became that call for me to just tap into that next level, that next gear.
I love it. We all need one of those. For me, one of the overarching themes of this book, I could just picture it as you're setting off on this destination, this theme of grief as a doorway, but not a destination. Choosing to survive rather than just endure, and it shows how the choice to survive and endure demands motion, purpose, and a little bit of risk taking. But what I'm really fascinated about is, like any good story, we don't hear a whole lot about how beautiful the sunset was in over the Pacific Ocean, or the palm trees swaying in this location, or what we heard were stories about humans that you interacted with all over the world, and the power of human connection. And I took that from the book, and I think you did just a remarkable job with it. What do you want a reader who is standing at their own edge, facing, it could be loss, it could be illness, the feeling that their life has narrowed to something less than they wanted it to be, or nothing at all? What do you hope they get from reading your book?
That one small step, one small decision can change your life. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Move forward in your day. And I'm giving life skills tied into every chapter. The surrounding myself with positive people. It's my friend Jean who told me when I was a shut-in and hadn't eaten outside of my home for years. She was a grandmother, so she knew about baby steps. She said, "Jill, let's just go to this little cafe. It's very open and airy. We'll get a coffee. Let's just do baby steps. Let's start there." And in the curriculum, the kids learn about stepping stones, stepping stone goals, small stepping stones to get to the larger goal. So I want people to walk away saying, grief, cancer, whatever you're facing, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. If you break it down into small steps, get those positive people in your life, let them help you move forward every day. And I promise things will get better.
Just get on the ship. Just
Get
get
on
on
the
the
ship.
ship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Two more questions. You know they're coming because I told you I ask all my guests. I think it's really important that we recognize, especially when we talk about journeys and pivotal moments in people's lives, that we all are a constant changing version of ourselves. If you had the opportunity to go back and say something to a younger version of yourself, and I don't know if you're 8 years old or 10 years old or 25 years old, but what do you want to tell that younger version of Jill?
Oh, it's 13-year-old Jill. The 13-year-old Jill that was the beginning of when I was bullied by Sarah. And then it was years of just ugliness and heartache and being ostracized and being in the library alone crying. I would tell her, ask for help. Ask for help. Nobody taught us how to ask for help. I suffered silently. And again, that's a life skill kids learn in an overcoming obstacles class. But I would tell myself then, ask for help.
Great advice. We could all learn from that. Now, shifting gears, you're resilient. Life's thrown a lot at you, different cancer diagnoses, loss of a husband, a very fulfilling life, and there's a lot more to be lived. You are going to get to listen to this several years in the future. Is there a message that you want to deliver to the future version of Jill?
How many years?
You pick.
No, you pick. It's your
Okay.
show.
Uh, I'm going to say 10 years from now. 10
I
years from
say,
now.
I say, congratulations. One
You
of my
did it.
doctors said, if you make it to 70, you'll have hit a home run. And I remind him of that when he looks at my blood work now and says, you're doing great. Wow, I didn't expect this of you. I'm like, how lame was it that you told me making it to 70 is a home run? I said, I'm going to make it to 80. I'm gonna make it to 90, you just watch. So if I make it 10 years and I'm 75, I'm gonna say congratulations.
Oh, Jill, I have so many friends like you. I know how to manipulate them so well. I just say, "Bet you can't." And
Oh,
they always
you got it,
they
you
always
got it.
try to prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the time that you dedicated to us today. Will you remind the listeners how they can receive copies of your book, Packets of Hope, and also how could they can learn information about overcoming obstacles?
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for doing this incredible work that you are to document people's work and lifelong passions. So packetsofhope.com is the website, and the book is available as a free download right
Totally
there,
free.
totally free. The overcomingobstacles.org website, I hope people will send, first visit themselves, but send every educator, parent, concerned community leader that they know to that website because this is the way we're going to change our world.
Wonderful. You had to travel across the globe and hand deliver packets across the world, and our listeners just have to go to your website and download it for free on a PDF. Wonderful. I love it.
And yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Jill, thanks for your time. Peace be with you. Thanks
Peace be
again.
with you. Bye.